a sigh of relief, okay? Just whenever you need to interrupt something or reinforce something or alter a course, just take a long inhale, track the sensations of expansion side to side, front to back, top to bottom. Take your time, zero in on the sensations as you breathe in. Enjoy that expansion stress. Let the exhale go with the sigh. Let go of a muscle, let go of a joint, let go of a thought, if that's what it was. And you can start to just use a big exaggerated sigh of relief as an intervention technique.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of I Love Being Sober. My name is Tim Westbrook, and I'm the CEO and founder of Camelback Recovery here in the always sunny and always sober Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have helped thousands of people on their path to recovery. We started this show because there's so much misinformation about addiction treatment, mental illness, and recovery in general. There's so much more to recovery than just going to inpatient treatment, seeing a therapist, and going to 12-step meetings. All of those things are important, and AA saved my life. However, to find long-term recovery and live happy, joyous, and free, there's just so much more to it than stopping the drinking, stopping the drugs, stopping the sex addiction, or stopping any addictive behavior for that matter. To live a new life, a person needs new, healthy lifestyle habits, amongst other things. Typically, this includes new eating habits, new sleeping habits, new exercise habits, new hobbies, new interests, new friends. Self-care becomes a priority, and the list goes on. Those are the types of things that we talk about here on the show. And today, I'm here with Dan Brulé, also known as the Bruce Lee of Breathwork. Dan is a modern-day teacher, healer, and a world-renowned pioneer in the art of science and breathwork. He coaches and certifies professional breathworkers, and since 1970, he has traveled to 67 countries and has trained more than 250,000 people to use breath and breathing for personal growth, professional development, peak performance, self-healing, and spiritual awakening. He has trained Olympic athletes, special forces, and elite martial artists. He coaches leading medical experts, psychotherapists, yoga teachers, fitness gurus, corporate executives, life coaches, and celebrities, including Tony Robbins. Dan is the author of several books, including Just Breathe, Mastering Breathwork for Success in Life, Love, Business, and Beyond. And I got the book right here. It's a great book. Dan, welcome to the show. I'm honored to have you here.
Hey, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So Dan, tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, I started out as an x-ray technician for a couple of years. I got a deferment to go into the military. They gave me a 2-year college deferment. That was during the draft in the Vietnam era. So rather than just getting scooped up coming out of high school, they gave me a 2-year deferment. I went to x-ray school, so I went into the military as a medical person, basically, as an x-ray technician. I put myself out of business on my very first duty assignment because I was stationed at the Naval Station in Annapolis, Maryland, across the river from the Naval Academy. And when I went to my x-ray room and discovered that there was no lead anywhere in the building, I'm going, that's against the law to be x-raying without any. So I was in Annapolis, the Naval Station. I put myself out of business because I couldn't take x-rays. So the military started renting me out to the Heart Association, to the Red Cross, to state and local fire and state police. And I started training paramedics and EMTs, first responders. And then my 2 years was up. I went into the military as first duty station. I was 2 years in Annapolis. And then I got orders for the JFK, which is basically a floating city, an aircraft carrier with 5,000 guys on it. And I had grown really accustomed to my independence. So I called up the billeter in DC and I said, look, can you give me anything except the aircraft carrier? They said, anything? I said, yeah, sure, anything. So they put me in deep sea diving, special operations, and I was trained as a deep sea diving medical rescue technician. I did demolition. I did underwater salvage and rescue. I got a chance to practice a lot of breath holding. I rescued a lot of people, treated decompression sickness. And so working in those high stakes, life and death kind of situations, we're always looking at how to manage our emotions and manage our chemistry and manage our arousal and so on. And so I just lesson after lesson started leading me to the conclusion and the experience that if I get a handle on my breath, I got a handle on my heart rate, I got a handle on my stress, I got a handle on my anxiety, I can up or down regulate. And so I quickly became a missionary for the breath because it saved my own damn life. I was able to kind of stay clear. And it also produced these amazingly ecstatic, blissful states, which, as the years went by and I was training people in breath work, somebody would get up from a session and go, wow, I've taken a lot of drugs to feel like this. I go, yeah, right. We got a pharmacy in our brain. We can manufacture whatever chemicals our body needs to get through whatever we got through. So I like the fact that with breath work, you can hack into your immune system. You can hack into your nervous system. And so I've been a missionary for the breath ever since.
And kind of on that note, with regulating your heart rate and so forth, I mean, I watched the documentary on Stig Stigman. Is that how you say his name?
Severinsen. Stig Severinsen?
Yes, Stig Severinsen. I watched his documentary, which was a fantastic documentary, and it was after listening to your audiobook, Just Breathe, and it was really watching his breath go down. I mean, I think he brought his heart rate down to like 30 beats per minute or something like that, just by breathing and by putting his face in the water. That was crazy. Okay, so what is breath therapy, anyways?
Well, it's using the breath as a tool, a bridge, a force for health, for growth, for change in body, mind, or spirit. We're using the breath to connect with our inner healer, our inner teacher, our inner guide, our inner resources. Breath work unlocks human potential.
Okay, and what gives you the right to claim you are an expert in breath therapy?
Well, I mean, I started in 1970, which means I've been doing this for like 50 years already. And at the time, I felt like a voice crying out in the wilderness. People go, breathing, schmeathing, yoga, schmoga, meditation, schmeditation. We just weren't ready. And I literally got laughed out of quite a few rooms in the early days where they, what are you, some pop psychologist? What are you got no credentials in psychiatry or psychotherapy. And here you are telling people if they just practice certain breathing stuff, they can clear away. So it was an uphill battle. But hey, now 40, 50 years later, breathwork has become the tool of our day. It's the leading movement in wellness on the planet. It's going to replace yoga and meditation. It's outpacing every other form of fitness training, psychotherapy interventions. It's time. It looks like the world is finally waking up to breathing. And maybe because of, wearable technologies, you can practice certain breathing techniques and in real time, you can track the physiological, biological changes. That's powerful. So it's speeded up. The old yogis had to do trial and error, for decades and centuries. And now, with wearable technologies and now science is understanding kind of what's happening when you play with your breath, how you're altering your pH balance, how you're working with dopamine and adrenaline. And so it's like, whoa, we've found a way to hack into this stuff that we would think, well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way I am. It's unconscious. It's part of that autonomic nervous system, which can't be controlled. And now we realize with every single breath, we are controlling our autonomic nervous system. We are controlling our pH balance. And so it's probably a good idea to get conscious, because if you have some dysfunctional breathing habits and patterns, it might be causing a lot of the problems. It's said that 60% of the ambulance calls in the major cities in the USA, 911 medical emergency calls, 60% of them are associated with dysfunctional breathing. And it's not being recognized, and the causes are being attributed to other things. And when really it's dysfunctional breathing patterns. And people have heard that, I think I'm having a heart attack. No, you're having an anxiety attack. And you want to control that anxiety, control your breathing. So it's pretty cool. I'm excited that the world is kind of caught up on what we thought was kind of a new thing. But as it turns out, it's pretty ancient, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you mentioned so many things just in that the last couple of minutes, including changing your pH, bringing your body to an alkaline state instead of an acidic state, mental illness, anxiety, depression. Those are all things that can be controlled just through breathing. And
Oh yeah.
today, there's more and more people are realizing that, and there's more breathwork sessions and breathwork classes that are happening these days, and more people are talking about breathwork, and more people are doing breathwork, and it's becoming really a thing. And breathwork really is work. It's not like that's the work part. It's work. It's work.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's an art, it's a science, but it's like, you know, on one level, it's kind of like trying to learn how to whistle. You know, I know how to whistle. How do you teach somebody else how to whistle? You can't, it's something you can't teach, like balance. How can you teach balance? You can learn it, but you can't teach it. So it's very empowering. That means if you unlock the potential, it's because you did the work. And, you know, I've worked with probably close to 250,000 people by now. I've been in 67 countries. I've had my hands on nearly 250,000 people. And I've got a chance to do a lot of experimenting. 1990, I started my experiments in Russia, former Soviet Union, because I thought, well, I'm never going to come back here. What do these people know? So I used them as my guinea pigs. And I had some feelings. I had some experiences myself. We hadn't confirmed it scientifically. We didn't have much research on it. So I thought, what the heck? Let me use my Russian friends as guinea pigs. And that's where I had a lot of my breakthroughs in the Soviet Union from the early 90s, where we were able to put into practice. I work with Spetsnaz, you know, special forces people, their equivalent of the DEA people. I work with 500 psychiatrists, psychologists in the Soviet Union. I work with several of the Olympic teams, the judo team, the wrestling team, the triathlon team, the rowing team. So, because, you know, when you come from far away, they think you're really special, you know, if you, you know, prophets never recognize in their own home kind of thing. So that really accelerated the work, you know, and then the West wants to keep up with the Russians. So it was kind of a race to like see who can hack into the breath the fastest.
Right. So what specific incident inspired you to be so passionate about breath work? Where were you? What happened? Was there a specific, like a turning point or a specific event that you remember? And that was when you decided, wow, this is my calling.
It's like a string of events. And then you're looking back and you kind of realize it's already happened. You know, it wasn't a plan. It wasn't going forward. Okay, I think I'll do this. It just kind of snuck up on me, little experiences along the way, you know, with major stuff, you know, people dealing with really heavy, serious psychological, emotional addictions, pain, chronic pain, injuries. And so I realized, you know, it's just like a sort of a series of small events that kind of added up to like a big picture. And then I've had a couple of clients who had right out of the book miracles. You know, we worked in the early, in the 80s, we were working with people with AIDS with the Louise Hay group out in LA. And I worked in the alcohol prevention, intervention, kind of recovery. You know, I kept getting invited in. And so it was just kind of this accumulation, this weight of experience that finally just collapsed my old world and just put me on this path. I can't think of anything better to do. It happens. The benefits come so quick, almost in the immediate moment. And then with training, those immediate benefits become long-term established habits and states. So I've had miracle clients, you know, who just beat all odds, and cancer, diabetes, epilepsy, asthma. But, you know, a lot of this isn't duplicatable. You know, it's like there's this subjective factor. What is your passion? What do you believe is possible? How much work are you willing to put into this? So, you know, so there's that aspect that seems to affect the benefits of breath work, you know? And so I've been working a lot on that, on the consciousness factors. And in pharmaceutical industry right now, I had a great conversation with a group of pharmaceutical CEOs. And a new term, the buzzword in the pharmaceutical industry is called patient activation. And patient activation refers to, like if I really believe this is going to help me, it really helps me more. If I think, this isn't going to work, I don't feel it's right for me, then it doesn't. So there's a lot about education now that set up, it's like the placebo kind of, effect. But I call that the consciousness effect. What do you think is possible? Are you ready? I think that readiness is the thing. You can have something that works perfectly. A good doctor, a good method, a good technique, a good process, a good book that has all the answers. But if you're not ready, it don't matter how good the technique is, doesn't matter how smart the doctor is, none of that matters. If you're not ready, then nothing's going to work. But if you're ready, you're going to make whatever you do work. That readiness, I think, is the key. And breath work actually helps us generate that readiness. I mean, my friend Tony Robbins calls it hunger. If you're hungry enough, you're going to do what you need to do to make a change. And if you're not, then you're going to have to wait until you hit bottom, or I don't know what other phenomenon. Desperation, that's a great motivator, right? Desperation. If you get desperate enough, you're going to do what you need to do. The other side of that is inspiration. If you could have a mind-blowing, heart-opening, cracked open experience that's so powerful and so beautiful, that inspiration is just as great a motivator as desperation. But until you're inspired, maybe you just wait till you're desperate.
Okay. So now, Guy, you said lots of good things there. So you talked about addiction and how breath work can help a person with addiction. And I also believe that whatever it is that you believe, whether you believe you can, whether you believe you can't, you're right. And I believe the placebo effect, right, it's so real. If you think you're going to get better, you're going to get better. If you want to get better, you're going to get better. If you think you're not going to get better, guess what? You're not going to get better. And I really I think this is the first time I've heard you say that breath work can help you get to a place where you're hungry. Breath work can help you get to a place where you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about breath work in relation to addiction recovery. So how have you seen breath work help people that are addicted to drugs, opiates?
Everything is about managing our internal state, right? I mean, it's not the event that causes a certain experience. My reaction, my interpretation, the meaning I give, that determines my experience. So I have a feeling or sensation in my body, and then I have a certain reaction to that feeling and sensation, right? I have a certain thought. That thought causes another thought, and that thought triggers another thought, right? So if I have a thought, it causes an emotional reaction, it causes a physical reaction. If I have a physical feeling, it causes an emotional reaction and a psychological reaction. If I have an emotional experience, it causes certain psychological stuff and certain physiological stuff. So I just discovered that if we play in this loop between thoughts, feelings and sensations and emotions, and we come in with the breath and we start modulating and regulating and meeting those things with the breath. So somebody steps on my toe and I punch him in the nose. Like, okay, wait a minute. Why should A lead to B like that? And then I step back and go, oh, they accidentally stepped on my toe. Oh, sorry, I punched you in the nose, right? So we come in and we intervene with the breath. Before you say anything, before you do anything, take a breath. Bring yourself back to a center place. Clear away whatever. If I'm angry and I make a decision, who's deciding, me or my anger? If I'm neurotic and I make a choice, who's choosing, me or my neuroses? If I'm addicted to a substance and I take an action, who's taking the action, me or that substance? So breathing kind of keeps bringing us back to our genuine center, our central access, who we really are. We can get under our thoughts, under our emotions, under the feelings and sensations, and start to deal with life. I think about it in terms of energy. Everything is energy. A feeling and sensation is a form of energy, an expression of energy. An emotion is a form of energy. A thought is a form of energy. And with breath, we begin to manage our energy before it becomes a thought, before it becomes an emotion, before it becomes a physical sensation. We're dealing with like pure life force energy, I could say, right? And so I think about it like getting upstream of my mind, upstream of my body. And that's what the breath does. The breath is the link between the body and mind. The breathing is the link between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. And so when we start to play with the breath, we're entering this realm where we can really make a difference. It's like that domino game you play. You know, you knock over one and brrr, they all fall. It would take forever to go down and knock each one of those dominoes over one by one. But if you can get under it all and make a change, everything else just kind of follows through. So breathing takes us to, in spiritual terms, who you really are, how you really are. And it gives us a handle on the power of our will. And it gives us a handle on our intuition. And through the breath, we can connect with lots of feelings and sensations. We can actually choose them. You can choose to generate feelings and sensations. You change your breathing pattern and you change your state. So every physical state, every emotional state, every psychological state has a corresponding breathing pattern, an associated breathing quality. And when your state changes, your breathing pattern changes. I mean, anybody can see that. If I'm calm and peaceful and happy, I'm breathing in a certain way. I suddenly get angry and upset and afraid, and you can see the difference in the breathing. So when your state changes, your breathing changes. And the magic is it's a two-way street. By changing your breathing pattern, you can change your psychological, emotional, physiological state. You can come into a place where you have more personal power, where your decisions are coming from the real you and not from your addiction, not from your programming, not from your conditioning, not from your fear. It's coming from the real part of you. And so breath becomes this bridge where we can connect to our inner resources and start to drop all the unnecessary dysfunctional strategies. I think that addiction is actually, the underlying impulse is pure, it's beautiful, it's positive. We want to change our state. We know we can feel better. We know we want to live without the pain or whatever it is. We know that, and it's just not a good strategy. We're trying to solve a problem. We're just not solving it in a very resourceful way. And I think people given the choice and they feel the benefit, then they're going to choose the more positive strategies. And breath work is part of a more positive strategy.
Right. I mean, addiction is a solution to the pain. Is many times that's when people are reaching for a drink or for a drug or they're excessively gambling or doing anything, any addictive behavior. It's really just a solution. It's a solution. So if they can learn how to get the solution and how to feel better just by breathing, which for most people, and myself included, I now believe, but prior to, it's like how a person that is suffering from addiction, a person that's suffering from any sort of mental illness, anxiety, depression, anything, like for them to think about breathing, like how can we get a person to believe that simply breathing correctly or doing breath work is going to help them and help them get to a different state of mind?
They just have to do it. The real game is just getting people to practice, because then they get unarguable results and benefits. You can't argue with your own experience. Nobody can convince you. So the only trick, the only game is just getting people to get in the room and do it and let them prove it to themselves and see for themselves. And in the very first session and over a series of sessions, there's just unarguable changes. People cry for the first time in 20 years. They feel their body for the first time ever. They're suddenly feeling high and they didn't have to take a drug. They suddenly realize that, oh, wow, I'm feeling less pain. What happened? And so, you just got to give people the experience. People just have to have the experience. And then you don't need any proof. You don't need any convincing. Then you just need training and practice to really refine and move forward with the skill breath work. Right? So, and there's enough studies now, you can just jump right in practicing certain, they turn out to be ancient yogic techniques, but they got new modern names and stuff to them. So the answer is the proof is in the pudding. You just got to I got to cajole or seduce or convince or whatever it takes to get people to sit down, lay down, and begin to play with their breath. And the rest is easy. The rest,
Right.
in fact, there's nothing else I need to do after that. It's like, okay, boom, I've connected to you, to your own inner resources. You are now getting the evidence, a felt sense of a change in your state, in your attitude, and your overall well-being. Now you're motivated. And if you're not motivated, I don't know what else you can do. You don't want to be better, I guess. If you know, and maybe that's true. And I think that this a part of it's like we have to feel bad to feel good. Humans seem to have this subconscious addiction to suffering, a psychological addiction to suffering. It's a weird human phenomenon. I can't wrap my mind around it. So maybe it's about rewiring chemistry. Right now, we're being rewarded for dysfunctional behaviors, and we need to rewire that dopamine or whatever it is and have it support other behaviors, right? So breathing produces this chemical cascade, this extraordinary shift in chemistry, and you cannot not feel it. And if you're motivated at that point, then you realize, okay, I think I can pick myself up by my own bootstraps. I think I can do this, because you're starting to get evidence that it's making a difference. You get more and more motivated with a good guide, a good helper. You can really accelerate the process. So it's about education, and it's about giving people an experience. I don't know any other way. I tell stories, I give people things to practice, and I leave the rest up to God. I don't know what else to do, you know?
So how does someone get started if they want to start doing breath work? How do they get started?
As a personal practice, you start with breath awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You get up in the morning, and before you have your coffee and maybe go to the bathroom or whatever, before you get going, just sit for a few minutes and just observe your breath. It's so simple. It's what the Buddha was doing when he became enlightened, right? This wonderful story of the Buddha, his mission in life was, what is the cause of suffering and what is the cure for suffering? And he set out on this mission, took him 12 years. He finally got to the point where he said, I've done everything I can, it's humanly possible. I've studied with everybody. I've traveled everywhere. I've tried every technique, every exercise. I've run out of things to do, people to learn from, places to go. So he sat under a tree and he began to observe his breathing, which is mindfulness training, right? Breath coming in, breath going out. So we're just observing the breath coming in, the breath going out. I am developing mindfulness. I'm developing focus. And so that practice of breath awareness, what does it feel like to breathe? Can you tune into the sensations at the tip of your nose? Can you feel the breath up into your sinuses and your skull? Can you feel your breath in your throat? Can you feel the movements in your chest and your belly? You meditate on all these feelings and sensations. You tune into them. It's meditation. That's the first step, meditative awareness. Because the more conscious you are, the more aware you are, the more you're going to get from the breathing technique that you practice. So developing breath awareness is the first step. Notice how you're breathing when you're trying to solve a math problem. Notice how you're breathing when you're stuck in traffic. Notice how you're breathing when you're washing dishes, when you're making love, when you're having an orgasm, when someone is insulting you. Tune into your breathing at these different times and in these different situations, and tune into your breathing as a ritual. Start your day, end your day, take a break in the middle of the day where you just let everything else go and just observe your breathing. Just be with your breath. You don't have to breathe in any special way. We're developing interoception. We're developing mindfulness. We're developing attention. We're training focus. And this starts to give us much more power in decision-making, in choices, in self-regulation, and so on. So that's the first step, breath awareness. Just become conscious of your breathing at different times in different situations, and put aside some time, meditation time, whatever you want to call it, where you just moment to moment, just focus on your breathing. Develop that meditative awareness. That by itself is tremendously powerful. The second step is then you begin to consciously breathe. So breath awareness is passive, is the first step. conscious breathing is active. It's the second step. This is where I take over the breathing. I breathe in a certain way, a breathing pattern. I breathe with a certain intention. I give the breath a certain quality, a certain rhythm. Now I'm into conscious breathing. So there are the two basic aspects of breath work: breath awareness, which is passive, conscious breathing, which is active. And now you play this game of bringing the two back and forth together: meditative awareness, attention training, and developing breath control.
Love it. And now that I'm into breathing and I pay attention to my breathing, I also look at other people and I look at their breathing, and I can see most people walk around and they take very shallow breaths, which the shallow breaths lead to the anxiety, lead to the bad decisions, lead to, not enough oxygen in your brain to make good decisions.
And it's a way to hide from our feelings. See, because when you begin to turn your breath up, you turn up all the feelings in your body. And if those feelings are uncomfortable, you don't like to feel them, you're going to hold your breath because you don't want to activate all this icky emotions and sensations and feelings in your system. It's like you have a glass of water and at the bottom there's this muck. And in the beginning, in the top, there's this clear stuff. And if you stir the glass or you shake the glass, all this muck comes up and it feels icky. And so you want to stop whatever you're doing, let all that muck settle back down to the bottom. And then you think you feel okay. Okay, I'm clear again. As long as nobody shakes me, as long as nobody stirs me, I'll be okay. Well, good luck going through life like that. The other idea is, so you pour fresh water into the glass, the water overflows, all this muck comes up, and it gets released from your system. And so holding your breath is a way to be invisible. It's a way not to be noticed. If I was shamed or I was guilted and I'm a little kid sitting in the back of the classroom and the teacher's looking for somebody to ask a question about the homework, and I'm in the back trying to be invisible, and I'm holding my breath. A little 3-year-old child hiding behind a couch, playing hide and seek. Who taught that child to hold their breath? It's deeply wired into us. If you want to be invisible, if you don't want to feel, hold your breath. And so it's like an unconscious strategy of breath holding to keep ourselves from accessing certain feelings that we're afraid of, we think are bad, we don't like them. And so it's an unconscious strategy. And that's why people develop dysfunctional breathing habits. Like right now, when I'm speaking, I'm using my hands to communicate, right? I'm also using my breath to communicate. And if you were to look at my breathing pattern while I'm talking right now, it would seem chaotic. It would look like I was doing gymnastics. Like it speeds up, it slows down, it stops, it goes, and you go, wow, what a horrible breathing pattern. Can that be healthy? You go, oh, well, it's not serving my physiology. It's serving my communication. So that's how we end up in dysfunctional breathing patterns. We're using the breath for one thing, but it's getting in the way on another level. If that makes sense.
Okay, so let's talk about yawning. Why is yawning? Yeah. And you're the first person I've ever heard talk about yawning. And I always thought that yawning was rude. If I'm talking to somebody and they yawn, I'm like, wow, I must be really
boring you?
Am I boring you?
Am I boring you? Are you tired? Yeah.
But I've heard you.
That's social. Yeah, that's that social conditioning. It's like socially unacceptable to yawn. Like it's a human thing. And neuroscientists are scratching their heads going, oh my God, this yawning lights up more parts of the brain, triggers more different events neurologically than any other single activity. It's pretty cool. So they're finally yawning. Research is being done on it. Animals yawn before an attack. They yawn after the fight is over. Light stimulates yawning. Fatigue stimulates yawning. Extra energy stimulates yawning. Heat stimulates yawning. It's like, what the heck is going on with yawning? Why would nature make us do this? And why are so many things connected to it? It cools off the brain. That's one of the things that when you yawn, you're cooling off the brain. Who'd have thought? When you're yawning, you're discharging toxins. When you're yawning, you're lighting up certain energy structures. And we can understand it in yoga and in acupuncture and Chinese and Eastern arts with the nadis and chakras and energy channels. The breathing is affecting all that also. Yeah, it's just exciting, but we have to be our own scientists. We gotta begin to experiment ourselves and practice and start to tweak our practice, and you can get really good at it. You can use your breath to shift from any state into any other state, because every psychological state, every emotional state, every chemical state has a corresponding breathing pattern. And when you play with one, you affect the other. And so that's why it's being taught Navy SEALs and Special Forces. If you're on a helicopter, you're on your way to a serious, you don't even know what you're on your way to, but it ain't going to be fun. What are you doing? You're doing box breathing. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4. Square breathing, box breathing. So you're in, and it's like say 4 seconds in, pause for 4 seconds, 4 seconds out, pause for 4 seconds. You do that on the way to a shitstorm. You do that before an important presentation. You do that to get ready for a stressful event, because you're balancing your nervous system, and the breath holding at the top of the inhale, at the bottom of the exhale, it gives us a sense of being in control. And if you get a control of your breath, you got a control of yourself. And that feeling of being in control and balancing the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, you can show up in the best possible state. And then what happens when you hit the ground, you turn into tactical breathing, which is connected, continuous circular breathing. And then you do little micro goals. I get from this tree to this rock, and I get from this rock to this other rock, and little tiny micro goals. And then pretty soon you've overcome this tremendous challenge. You've overcome tremendous odds, and you have victory. So we need this approach with our own addictions, with our own dysfunction, with our own illusions. And breath gives us this power, this motivation, and it's an actually tool that you can use. So I'm a missionary. You can tell I am a fanatic about breathing. I'm looking for anything it cannot help. I haven't found anything yet.
Right. One of the things that I admire and respect about you is that you're open to all different types of breath work. And there are lots of other breath work practitioners out there, or teachers. Wim Hof, he preaches the Wim Hof method, which I know that you're a huge fan of. And then James Nestor talks about breathing through your nose. And there's lots of others out there, and they have their one way. But you talk about box breathing. You talk about the Wim Hof method. You talk about breathing through your nose. You talk about yawning. Like there's so much more to it. There's not just one way to breathe or one way to practice breathing. And you also talk about circular breathing, which I've heard Wim Hof talk about circular breathing as well. And really, the first time I really truly learned how to circular breathe was at your breathwork workshop. And now I practice it, and I know how to practice it. And I've actually taught a few people as well. It's super awesome. Yeah.
No, because this cookie stamp kind of approach, I've always been an exception. So I assume everybody else is an exception. The general rules very often didn't apply to me. I was in that 20% exception mode, that certain drugs and stuff. So I just assume. And so, we got to do whatever works. And people, you find somebody, a certain technique, a certain style, and they're just suited for you. And so good, go for them, go for it. And then when you've learned everything you can learn from them, then go on to the next. That's what I've done my whole life. I traveled in India. I traveled in China. I traveled through Europe. Anybody who ever said they knew anything about breathing, who was teaching anything about breathing, and if I heard about them, I was going to be kissing your feet or breathing down your neck until I could get whatever I could get from you. And then I went on to the next teacher. And I realized that we got to find our own way. We have to find our own way in life. If you're walking someone else's path, you're walking the wrong path. It doesn't matter how many people believe it's a beautiful path. It doesn't matter how great the Buddha was or Jesus was or whatever. How can 20 million Buddhists be wrong? Well, maybe you're an exception. Maybe you need another way. So I just assume that from the get-go. And I don't try to force any one method or style or idea or technique on people, because we got to play, we got to try. There are certain fundamentals, though, There are universal fundamentals. And if you look at all the breathing approaches and styles and techniques, you can boil them down to a few fundamentals. So I try to teach those fundamentals. And then you put those fundamentals together in your own way, and you create your own unique way through your issues, whatever it is.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left, so I want to go through. There's a couple more things I wanted to go through. I wanted to talk with you about nose breathing versus mouth breathing. James Nestor talks a lot about nose breathing and taping your mouth. And I'm a person that I tape my mouth when I sleep. I have taped my mouth when I sleep, and to force breathing through my nose as opposed to through my mouth. So tell me what's the difference, and what's the benefit of breathing through your nose versus your mouth?
Well, our nose is meant to breathe through. No, I'm 100% on board with James Nestor. His book is fantastic. We've had lots of conversations. We've met. Just beautiful guy. Love him. Patrick McEwen, Oxygen Advantage, similar kind of work. The Buteyko method for asthma and so on. That's one end of the spectrum of breathwork, which I honor and respect, and I work and I train and I teach. So the nose is meant to breathe through, but you can't laugh through your nose. You can't cry through your nose. You can't speak through your nose. So you have to be able to breathe through your mouth. And me as a diver, doing a lot of diving with a snorkel, you can't breathe through your nose. You got to breathe through your mouth. And so you got to learn how to relax while you're breathing through your mouth. You got to learn how to breathe through your mouth without triggering the fight or flight mechanism. You got to learn how to breathe through your mouth without triggering the sympathetic branch of your nervous system. That's training, right? I look at it like house cleaning. My favorite metaphor about the difference between nose and mouth breathing is house cleaning. There are certain things you do when you're house cleaning that you don't do every day. You do light cleaning and dusting, and every now and then you do like a deep clean. You move all the furniture away from the wall. You do a scrubbing, a deep cleaning, right? So mouth breathing is like this deep cleaning. I've abandoned my house for 10 years. And then I go back to my house and I find out that vandals have been in there. Pigeons are dead. You got dead rats. You got piles of garbage. You don't start by dusting the windowsills, polishing the silverware. You do all the dense, heavy cleaning. You get all the heavy crap out. That's mouth breathing. And then nose breathing is kind of fine-tuned. So that's as far as spiritual purification, psychological, emotional cleansing. Breathing gets a lot done really fast. The heavy crap gets shoveled out, and then you start breathing through your nose, more fine-tuned cleaning. So mouth breathing is a technique. It's you shouldn't be sleeping doing mouth breathing. It shouldn't be your unconscious habit, but it's part of a technique that we use in order to do specific things. Your habit, your everyday breathing should be through your nose, and it should be diaphragmatic. However, breathing high in your chest and breathing through your mouth can help cure and flush out a lot of crap. And then you switch to nose breathing. So we got to be comfortable with the whole spectrum. And Buteyko and Patrick McEwen and James Nestor, they're on that side of the spectrum of physiological balance and chemical balance and so on. The other end of the spectrum is spiritual, transformational, ecstatic. It's a different end of the spectrum. And so I don't know where people are on that spectrum. So I meet them wherever they are. And then we go in whatever direction is lacking, right? So if somebody's breathing is really physiologically all screwed up, let's take care of that first. And if they're using if they want to see God, then you're going to breathe in a different way than if you want to make your headache go away, So if you want to raise your blood pressure, you're going to breathe in a different way than if you want to lower your blood pressure. If you want to energize and activate yourself, you're going to breathe in a different way than if you want to calm and quiet yourself. So we give people the tools, we help them get a little skill, and then we tap them on the butt and send them on their way, and come back when you've practiced a little bit and let's work some more. And that's how the process goes.
Okay, awesome. So do you recommend that people sleep with their mouth taped shut?
If you're a mouth breather, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a very good device, not taping it shut, but just enough so it's a little reminder, it makes you conscious. You don't literally tape your mouth shut. You can break the seal whenever you want, but it's a good reminder. because yeah, I mean, mouth breathing as an unconscious habit, not healthy, not healthy. And so if you're a mouth breather, you definitely want to change that habit, practice over a few days, a couple of weeks until, and it only takes a few days, a couple of weeks with good practice where you can turn around a long-standing practice. 3 weeks, 21 days, a month, absolute maximum to change almost any pattern in yourself. Then it's just a matter of reinforcing that pattern and sustaining it. So creating new habits. You mentioned in the beginning, you can't just get rid of an old habit. You got to replace it with a more functional, positive habit, and you displace the old one. If you're trying to quit smoking, chew on a carrot stick. You give your fingers something to do. You got to replace the habit with something else. And breathing becomes that. This is what I do instead of reaching for a drink. This is what I do before punching somebody in the face. This is what I do before going back and turning on, if I'm addicted to the news or porn or whatever, I want to take a few breaths and see if I can't rechannel that impulse, that energy in a different direction. And it only takes a few times of interrupting a pattern before it starts to get pretty easy. It's losing its charge. It's losing its dominance, its control over us. So breathwork is this brilliant intervention tool where you just, okay, stop right now. Take a couple of breaths before you say something, before you do something, before you reach for that. And that's the magic. In the addiction world, what I found in my own experience is that there's a gap between knowing what we need to do and actually doing it. We know we want to do something. We know we need to, but taking the action that's required, that's where the gap seems to be. And what I discovered is that breathing is a behavior. It's an action you can take. And so you can close the gap between an intention and taking an action. And you only have to do that a few times before there's no gap. Like right now, if I think about something to do, I got to get up and do it. Otherwise, I have to stop thinking about it. I can't tolerate that discomfort between thinking and wanting to doing something and not actually moving and taking action. It bothers me. So I either have to don't take action or stop thinking about it. And certain things, we can't stop thinking about it. They're too important. You got to do it. So you got to take some kind of action. And taking a conscious breath is an action. And so when you're able to take that action, you'd be surprised at what other actions you can begin to take, because you've closed that gap between having an intention, making a decision, and taking an action right away. While that intention is forming, you're already controlling your breath, you're already taking action. And it closes that gap between the intention and the action, and it starts to show up in other ways. So that action of taking a breath, a positive breath in the right direction, that's it. When we used to launch, I was on a rescue team one time, and the military lost a missile. And they brought this dolphin onto the ship with us. We had a ship. We had 30 divers on my ship. We were sneaking around and salvaging and finding stuff. But this missile was dropped down, and I don't know, I think it was 1,000 feet or whatever. It was deep. And so they brought a dolphin. We put him on a swimming pool in the back of the boat and brought him with his trainer. And he had a little ring with a monofilament line connected to it. That damn dolphin dove down that 800 feet or whatever it was, 900 feet. And he ran there was a magnetic thing attached to the missile already. So the dunk came through. And when he swam back up, he threaded that eye of the needle. Then we put a bigger cable on that monofilament. We ran that through. And then we put the biggest cable, and then we pulled up the missile. So the breath is like that first little thread. If you can get that working, then you can fit a bigger thread behind it and a big one behind that. And pretty soon you're lifting really heavy shit out of your life. But it's a skill. It's an art. It takes practice. And so my job is to make sure that I can seduce and cajole people into practicing, and then make sure that they get a good enough experience that they're motivated to practice some more. And then I can go to bed happy at night.
There you go. Well, listen, I want to be respectful of your time. I have so many, I could talk to you for another hour. I've got so many other things I could talk to you about, but I want to be respectful of your time. So where should somebody go if they want to learn more about you, if they want to learn more about your workshops, or if they just want to learn in general about how to breathe?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you mentioned my book. Thank you very much. Just Breathe. The forward in there is by Tony Robbins. He's one of my favorite clients. It's got, I distilled 40 years of practice and study into that book. So it's got a lot of great gems and bits in there. My website is breathmastery.com. You can find me on Instagram at Dan Brulé Official. I'm on Facebook, Dan Brulé, Breath Mastery. It's hard not to find me if you Google Breathwork, but breathmastery.com and at Dan Brulé Official for Instagram. And on my website, you'll find 40 years worth of articles and reports and recordings and so on. So whether you're a beginner or an expert, you're going to find some useful stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Dan, so much for your time. I appreciate you, and I will chat with you in the future.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for the opportunity, and good luck to everybody who's listening out there. A sigh of relief, okay? Just whenever you need to interrupt something or reinforce something or alter a course, just take a long inhale. Track the sensations of expansion side to side, front to back, top to bottom. Take your time, zero in on the sensations as you breathe in. Enjoy that expansion stress. Let the exhale go with the sigh. Let go of a muscle, let go of a joint, let go of a thought, if that's what it was. And you can start to just use a big exaggerated sigh of relief as an intervention technique while things are still workable. If you wait too long, it's going to be too complicated. So you got to catch it early at that first negative impulse, at that first dysfunctional tendency. Come in with a conscious breath. Take your time, fill yourself up, enjoy it. Let go and relax, and just turn a natural sigh of relief into a powerful intervention tool. And you can interrupt dysfunctional behaviors, and you can reinforce positive behaviors. If something beautiful happens, taking a long inhale, a big sigh of relief, and taking the pleasure. If somebody disturbs you, insults you, offends you, taking a long inhale, enjoy that sigh of relief. If you suddenly want to reach for a drink or whatever it is, take a long inhale, feel it, let that exhale go and sigh with relief, and interrupt and give yourself an intervention.
All right. Awesome. Thanks again, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you, man.